book number 9, a fourth novel amongst the other poetry collections and short stories. How does this connect to the other books? What's the themes and interests do you think are continued from those other writings here?
Well, I guess I write about persecuted people, outcasts. And my first novel, King Crow, was about an outcast, a kid who's excluded from school, who identified with ravens.
Yeah.
I didn't choose this cover, by the way. And none of the design team knew that about King Crow, so that's just a nice coincidence. My next novel, Cafe Assassin, was about a guy who'd been accused of a murder he didn't commit, and is a complete outcast and has lost everything. I feel like I need a psychiatrist's couch right now. Tell me about your childhood. Well, but I've always written that subject, really. I always have done, and it's always the thing that interests me. I guess they're interesting characters, aren't they? From a dramatic point of view, they're motivated, and they're within a context of turmoil, of jeopardy, of tension, of conflict, all the things that make good stories.
This is a very gothic book in lots of ways. I think I'm right in saying it's your first book with a real supernatural edge in a real explicit kind of way. And playing with it, and I love the way the covers kind of captured some of that. So tell us more about the witches. Obviously you've talked a little bit about the influences, but what's the kind of framework for witches? What do you do with them? What kind of ideas around witches can we expect in this book?
Well, it's very ambiguous, really. I mean, I've written it in a certain way that you can either go with that they do have some supernatural power, or that they're just persecuted and so on. So that ambiguity is there, really. But yeah, I was reading lots of cases of various cases, particularly in Yorkshire actually, but not just all over the country. A seventh daughter of a seventh daughter being accused of witchcraft. Somebody with 6 toes instead of 5 toes, or whatever the thing is. All these kind of fairly arbitrary things. So all these women are in some way kind of othered by something, either by their physical appearance or something that they've done. Quite innocuous things in lots of ways, and accused of witchcraft. But they're led by a kind of cult leader, if you like, who's much older. She's called Alice, and she's a bit of a mysterious character. Maybe she's not even from England. We don't really know. The way it's written is she is something else, really. And she seems to have these powers and she seems to be quite a benign character to begin with, but that develops, She has these rituals and things that she does to kind of bind and bond this group. And she has kind of a belief system that actually is connected to the family of love and their belief system. And it's kind of hinted at that maybe her parents are part of that and so on. But she takes the fly agaric mushroom and other mushrooms and other psychedelic botanical things, and she makes potions basically, and they imbibe, and they go into altered states, and what is then real and what's not real, what's imagined and what's. I'm kind of playing with that idea, really. Yeah,
there's some very weird parts of this book in a really enjoyable way.
I mean, most of my research, I guess, was reading books. And I went back to the Malleus Maleficarum, which was the first big witch hunt manual, which was published in the 16th century in Germany, and is a very, very strange book. But I was trying to get my head into this. I was trying to sort of understand the mindset of people that felt like that, So I was reading those kind of books. And that's a very, very odd book, and the guy himself was a very odd man. He was a sexual deviant and a zealot, probably a psychopath. And he wrote this really weird, repetitive, in a way a boring book actually, but really, really strange. He thought that witches were stealing men's penises.
Oh, God, he started telling me about this the other night. And why don't you freak everyone else out with this?
And there's a story in this book of a guy who thinks this witch has stolen his penis. So he goes to the witch and he says, I want my penis back. And he manages to persuade her. She says, well, what I'll do is I'll tell you where it is. There's a bird's nest over there made up of men's penises, and yours is in this nest. So this guy goes to this nest, and it's basically the nest is just a writhing, just penises that are all writhing around in this tree. And he can't find his penis, so he just takes a random penis and sticks it on, you know.
This is not what these good people were expecting this evening.
This is the good stuff. So I'm trying to get my head into this kind of weird, warped world where, you know, it's fear of female sexuality, clearly, but there's other things going on as well. But this is a kind of global satanic cult that catches fire, goes, you know, from Germany right the way across Europe and beyond. And people genuinely think that everything that bad is happening in the world is down to this satanic conspiracy theory.
You're interested in the history of wolves. Can you say a bit more about the history of wolves of England and the like? You've mentioned Europe there.
Well, again, I'm going to refer to Steve, the source of all my kind of knowledge, really. So I was talking to Steve about my interest in wolves. This is going back some years. And he said, have you read Barry Lopez's book of Wolves and Men? I said, I've not. He said, you've got to read this book. It's fantastic. So I did. And
when was that published? Sorry, what time frame?
80s, I think.
Yeah,
okay.
So some time ago. But what Barry does is he goes to America and he lives with some of the indigenous Native Americans who worship the wolf, or did worship the wolf, and still worship the wolf, and believe that the wolf taught us to be human. They taught us how to hunt. You know, that wolves, you know, act collaboratively. You know, a wolf can't bring down a bison, let's say, by itself. It needs to have a pack to do that. So a wolf has to operate in a cooperative way. And what certain Native American cultures believe is that we saw that, and that gave us the idea, because the same thing, you know, going back and back and back, you know, a human being couldn't bring down a woolly mammoth. It requires a cooperative effort to do it. So that really fascinated me, that idea. And what happens across, and that's not just there, by the way, that's across various cultures across the world. The wolf is revered, the wolf is worshipped, the wolf is something that we respect. But what happens in the agrarian revolution, when we move from being hunter-gatherers to farmers, is that the wolf is our threat. So when we're hunter-gatherers, the wolf is our kin. We're learning from the wolf. Well, that's how you do that. That's how you do that. So we're at one with this system. And then when we start to pen certain areas and say that we own that, and then anything that comes into that is a threat. So now the wolf's so our relationship with the wolf completely shifts. You know, 3, 4, 5,000 years ago. But he goes and he explores the way that they were, you know, and he explores the massacre of wolves that happened, you know, when English settlers came over to America, and just, you know, in some way needlessly, absolutely, completely drove wolves into extinction through, but not just wolves, because they were just mass poisoning and all kinds of things. They killed everything in their pursuit of killing wolves. They killed everything else that lived, you know. Right. And that's kind of, without giving too much away, that's kind of where that goes a little bit.